Yo, what's up guys? Tuna here. Sorry it took so long to make a video. PoE 2 has been kind of weird in that they haven't really given us too much info ahead of the league and stuff, so I didn't really want to put anything out where I tried it or stuff like that, which is actually pretty good because, I started spells. They were very good in the campaign, so... But after a few rerolls, I found something I really enjoy. I'm currently playing Twister and Whirling Slash as my build, so... I am basically moving around with Whirling Slash, and then I'm gonna be using Twister for my damage, and that's what it looks like when it procs. But the cool thing about this is that when you use Barrage and then cast Twister, you're gonna be letting off a lot more Twisters, as you can see. And Barrage has Frenzy Charge interaction, meaning when you get Frenzy Charges, you're gonna cast more Twisters. And that looks pretty crazy. So here is just some footage from my live stream, and this is kind of what it looks like when you're shooting out a lot of your twisters when you're empowering them with frenzy barrages, basically. So you can see here at the top left, I am going to be gaining frenzies as I hit monsters. The way that I'm getting frenzies, I will explain a little bit later, but when you press barrage, it consumes the frenzies up here, and it puts them stored into here, as you can see, 10. And it's gonna essentially just pump out a bunch of tornadoes. And it has pretty good coverage. It kind of feels like Spark. It does pretty damn good damage as well. Single target so far has been pretty insane. And I've managed to pretty much take on everything that the game has thrown at me so far. And I think it's pretty good. It's really strong. I can feel that it's going to have really good scalability for the end game. So by endgame, I mean, all the T4 bosses and stuff like that. I've yet to get to all of that kind of stuff, so I will basically like updating the build, the planner, as well as any information that I find out along the way. And you can always, come by the stream and ask questions, or maybe see if I figured anything else out, or if there's new tech, or just refresh the planner that I will link later with more info. All right, so I'm just going to put a little bit more footage of what the single target looks like, for example. So here is me getting my final ascendancy, so versus the Zarok. I don't know how to pronounce his name, Zarok. Yeah, and we can't really get too many frenzies here. You can see we only get like 2 frenzies, and still it's doing just insane amounts of damage, especially when you have like a room like this where your tornadoes can sort of bounce around. You are limited in that they can only hit the same target every 0.6 seconds, so they're not going to be really like turbo shotgunning as much as you'd expect. But it still deals a substantial amount more damage if you are in an enclosed space. And if you do find yourself in an arena where you're in an open space or something like that, then it's better for yourself to like basically plant yourself on top of the enemy to deal optimal amount of damage, because you want to get as many hits as possible out on him. And you do that basically by being close to him. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the build now and put some background footage so you guys can sort of see what it looks like, and with mapping and that kind of stuff. And I'll talk about the pros and the cons, and the things that I have felt with the build so far. This move is actually like, it's 3 buttons, right? So there's a few things that you need to do to set up the optimal amount of damage with the build. You are going to be whirling, slashing everywhere, and it's your mobility. You want as much attack speed as possible on this ability, because this is how you're going to be getting around in the game. You want as much attack speed on it as possible. And the downside of moving around with a mobility skill is that if you guys have ever played mobility skills in this game, they kind of get stuck on things, and it can be pretty frustrating actually. But as you end up playing like the build more and more, you kind of start getting used to it. The only real downside here is like when you get crowded maps like this, like for example when you get like crazy abyss maps, you can't really see anything. You can see all the monsters are T-posing on me and stuff. There's like objects on the floor, like the abyss holes that spawn and that kind of stuff, that kind of blocks your movement, and it can be pretty frustrating sometimes. But yeah, I mean, just wiggle your mouse around, and I feel like in general, like compared to most builds that I've experienced in this game, it's pretty good. Like it behaves pretty well in comparison. It has really good coverage, it has really good damage, it's fairly easy to play. You can play it as soon as you get Wake of Destruction boots at level 30. Your almost endgame weapon can be Tangle Tongue, which is another unique that's fairly common and easy to access. So there's a lot of really easy itemization things that you can put into the build, and you can very easily get it going quite early in your progression. Until level 30, I do recommend you guys level as Lightning Arrow. It's just the best way to level on a Deadeye. But once you get to level 30, you can start playing Twister, but know that your Frenzy Sustain is not going to be too good. And without good Frenzy Sustain, you're not going to get insane damage and this crazy amount of tornadoes and that sort of stuff. I'll now explain the mechanics, everything that you need to know on how to play the build optimally and that kind of stuff, because there's a few small things that you need to know. All right, so first of all, the control section. The control section is really important. You guys need to not skip this section because it's going to make your life playing this build so much better. So first of all, you have to play WASD with this build. The reason for that is just because of the way that the inputs are buffered in Path of Exile. This is not a problem in PoE1 because we don't have WSD or whatever, but essentially, if you're playing click to move, what happens is that when you press your Whirling Slash move, and then you press Barrage, it sort of interrupts you from Whirling Slashing around. Also, there's some weird thing with like your mouse positioning and where you want to place it and stuff. But if you have WASD, you're still click to moving because you're going to be binding your Whirling Slash onto whatever key you usually click to move with, be it, whatever. But if you are a WASD enjoyer or whatever, you can put like your move on T or something like that, or whatever key you have here, and you'll be able to move just well. WSD I barely ever use, I barely ever dodge with this build. You're just basically going only like this. The only time you ever dodge is if you get stuck on something like really bad, or if you're taking like a lot of incoming damage and you're scared or something like that. But usually you just whirl away. You're going to be Whirling Slashing. So first of all, go into your interface, WASD. Then you want to unbind left click. So bound skill 1, you do not want to have Whirling Slash here. The reason for that is, again, because the way that it targets, if you have it on left click here, is not specifically left click, it's just if you have it on bound skill 1, what happens is that it stickies onto monsters. So imagine the map device is a monster, I will be Whirling Slashing, and then I'll just end up getting stuck on it, because the game is going to think that I'm trying to attack it, aka name locking. It name locks only if you have it on this slot here. But the way I circumvented it is I put Whirling Slash on the second one, I unbound left click, and I bound left click here. And for some reason, that allows you to more easily traverse monsters and not get stickied onto them. Then for the rest, it doesn't really matter, just so long as you have target cursor as well, helps a little bit. You can put in WASD only or whatever, but put target cursor on, and then just save your settings, because this is going to save you a massive headache, and it's going to make playing this build feel a lot better. If you're a WASD enjoyer, I suppose you can put it like, you can put Whirling Slash on E and then like something on Q, like I suppose like the Twisters. But for me, I have Whirling Slash on left click, and then Twisters on right click, and Barrage on E, and that's how I play the build. And those small control changes just change my quality of life exponentially. So I really do recommend that you change your controls that way. Now let's explain the mechanics of this build. Wake of Destruction is a must for this build. Last league, people were using Cast on Crit Frostbolt, and Frostbolt used to generate Chilled Ground, allowing you to empower your tornadoes. Because if you look at the Twister, the gem specifically, just to explain how Twister gains damage based on element, you can see in the flavor text here, passing over elemental ground surfaces or consuming an elemental whirlwind will grant Twister extra damage of that element. So your Twister is going to be, in its current state, you can see that it's physical damage as it's spinning. And as I move, now it turns into lightning because of this, the shocked ground that's generated by Wake of Destruction. So unfortunately, Wake of Destruction is mandatory for this build. Getting one with a corruption is advised since they're pretty damn cheap. But you will need that to empower your tornado. But yeah, definitely a core part of how this skill functions. The next thing I want to explain is the weapon swap tech that I use. This season in 0.3, they made weapon swapping seamless, so you do not feel weapon swapping. There's no delay whatsoever. And that means that you can get the benefits of pretty much changing 24 passive skills on your tree to benefit Whirling Slash more, as opposed to benefiting Twister. Since Twister doesn't scale with attack speed, scaling attack, or like getting a bunch of attack speed on Twister is pretty much just wasted stats. So what I did on my current tree is I put, and this is really important, you put Whirling Slash on weapon swap 1. It's really important that weapon swap 1 because of Wriggle's ferocity. So you want it on weapon swap 1. And then you're going to go into your tree, and of course you can see the tree that's linked in the planner, but you're going to go into your tree and you're going to put all of the attack speed notables or all of the attack speed things on the tree. And that's going to be your weapon swap one. Like for example, like this. Then I have some utility stuff like poison duration or attack speed here and all that kind of stuff. And then all your critical damage and critical strike is going to be on weapon swap 2 because your twister is going to be benefiting from all that crit. And that's where you want all your damage to be. For the weapons, you're going to be using a Sky Sliver in your in your Whirling Slash setup, and then a Tangle Tongue early, and later on a Rare Spear when you can afford to upgrade, or your Twister. And Tangle Tongue is really good because of the bifurcate crits, which basically means you get double the amount of critical strike multiplier, and it makes it easier for yourself to crit, and it has very high base crit. They nerfed it a bit this season, but it's still really, really OP. But the alternative is, of course, to use a Rare Spear. And up until right before I ended the stream, I was using this spear. This spear. But then I decided to try to slam +4 on it, and I removed my critical strike chance. So now it's kind of bricked for me. But the reason you can do that is because you can use a new support, which is called Garukan's Resolve, which basically gives you the property that Tangle Tongue does, which is, it gives you like the double crit multi, at the expense of not being able to use your skill until you've traveled, say, like X amount of meters. So you can see that it's grayed out, and now I can use it, and I'm gonna have to like move around a little bit more, and then I can use it again. This isn't really a problem because you kind of want to get your salvo charges back up anyways, which is a support gem we're using on Twister that makes it shoot a lot more twisters. You're going to be swapping later on to this gem once you get like a really, really good spear, and that's going to be things that I'll add to the planner as I discover them and stuff. Yeah, your weapon swaps, that's how it works. Remember, weapon swap 1 is where you want your Whirling Slash, and weapon swap 2 is where you want your damage. And it's really important you do this because the quality of life that you gain from having a fast Whirling Slash is just insane. This is your movement speed basically, so you don't want to cheap out on it or whatever. Go over why you want it on weapon swap 1 is because of Rigwald's Ferocity, which gives you 20% more attack speed if it's used in weapon swap 1. And we're going to be complementing it with Rapid Attacks 3 for 35% increased attack speed, which is multiplied by the more. And then also Rage, which gives you even more. So that's a lot of more. That's 35% more that you get on this. Since you're never going to be at max Rage, this is the only way that you generate Rage. You're never going to be at max Rage, so you're just going to get that more multiplier. And then when Magnified Area, you can basically use anything as like your second to last. One thing that you can do is you can actually put like the Leech Gem in there, and that would allow you to click Walker of the Wilds, which is a modification I'm going to be doing a little bit later on once I get more gear. But essentially, when you get Fizz Leech, you can start leeching mana back with your elemental damage, and we deal a lot of elemental damage, so you're going to be getting basically like making your mana flask redundant at that point altogether. Another thing to mention is that Whirling Slash needs to be level 1. This needs to be level 1 for now, because if you level it up, it's going to consume just a shitload of mana and you're not going to be able to keep up with it. So make sure before you socket it and stuff that you keep it at level 1. Very important. So you can buy a level 1 gem, by the way, from the exchange right here. You can go gem level 1, you know, and it's going to show up here. So skill gem level 1. They cost a shitload apparently. So maybe go like level 2 or something like that. Or level 3. It doesn't really matter all that much. But yeah, for your Twister supports, you're going to want to be, if you're on Tangle Tongue, I think Pinpoint Crit, like we don't have Path of Building at the moment, but I think Pinpoint Crit is good for the 60% more. Since we did lose a lot of critical strike chance this patch, I think the Pinpoint Crit is actually just pretty good for this build. As if you don't crit, you're going to be dealing no damage, and the way that it works is that one cast is either going to be a crit or not a crit. So if you don't have high crit chance, it's going to be like every once in a while you'll let out a salvo of tornadoes and they deal shit damage, and you don't want that. Then we go on Projectile Acceleration. This is going to give you more projectile speed and also let you scale your damage with projectile speed, which is really nice. Salvo, this is what's going to give you additional seals, so it's basically like you're doing that ability 3 times every time you use it. You can see the number there, and then it's gone. And then Prolonged Duration, so that the tornadoes bounce around more. This is a massive more multiplier when taking arenas into account or anywhere where the tornadoes can bounce around. And finally, Rakyata's Flow. Rakieta's flow is broken. It lets you treat enemy monster resistances as inverted. I think it's currently bugged and not functioning, as like some people have reported. But if you don't have Rakieta's flow, which is going to be expensive, I assume, you could just use Elemental Armaments 2. Now, whether Elemental Armaments 3 is better, I'm not 100% sure. But for now, Elemental Armaments 2. For your Ascendancy, we are a Deadeye. Deadeye is really important because Deadeye is the only way to realistically generate Frenzy Charges now. Avidity with Thrilling Chase is going to be giving you just a ton of extra charges. But the most importantly, Called Shots. So Called Shots is going to be allowing you to trigger Sniper's Mark. It's going to trigger Sniper's Mark, and every time it triggers Sniper's Mark, you consume it. And when you consume it, it grants you a Frenzy Charge. You want to link that Sniper's Mark to Charge Perfusion, Efficacy for less cost, and cooldown recovery speed 2. And I just unlocked this because I just leveled to level 90, so I'm going to figure out what gem to put in there in a bit. The other Ascendancy, of course, is just Gathering Winds. Now, the benefit of consuming double is pretty nice because sometimes you'll just get a huge barrage. It'll be pretty dope. And then this is just really nice for sustain. So you just want to have as many frenzy charges as possible, as fast as possible. So it's just nice to have. It does suck losing Wind Ward, as we can stack up the Gathering Winds very fast, but it is what it is, unfortunately. Now, the order I would grab these in is this Gathering Winds is number 1, Called Shots is number 2, and as soon as you get Called Shots as well as Wake of Destructions, that's when you can start twistering in the campaign. And yeah, you could just go go do that. And then for the third Ascendancy, I would actually go Wind Ward because I feel like Thrilling Chase is really worth it, but early on, until you get a lot of evasion, you feel pretty squishy, so Wind Ward helps a bit. But if you're not feeling squishy, you could just go straight for Avidity into Thrilling Chase. The way that I did it was 1, 2, 3, and then 4, basically. So for the rest of the support gems, as I said, we have Twister with Rakyatas, Pinpoint, Projectile Acceleration, Salvo, Prolonged Duration, Called Shots with Sniper's Mark, Charge Perfusion, Efficacy, Cooldown Recovery Rate, number 2. If you don't have Rakia's Flow, then just use the Elemental Armaments level 2. Here for Whirling Slash, it's Rigwell's Ferocity, Rage 3, Rapid Assault 3, and Magnified Area 2. For Barrage, I'm using Cooldown Recovery 2, Heightened Charges, Rapid Casting, and Perpetual Charge. There's nothing really I can put on the 6th one as far as I know. I'm currently using Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, but I do feel like they're kind of underwhelming, so I still have to figure out my spirit supports. Obviously, we can't use Roa, but there is merit to potentially thinking about getting a follower, Tame Beast or something like that with us. There's some pretty crazy stuff like that people are using now, so getting a nice Tame Beast of some sort would help here instead of these 2 Heralds. But for the time being, I think this is by far like the weakest link in my build at the moment, since I was trying to do like this whole freezing with the Herald of Thunder. So I got Freeze, Falling Strike, and Elemental Armaments. And then, shocking with Herald of Ice. But it's not really working all that well anymore. So on Herald of Ice, I got Frozen Spite. This is kind of decent. It lets off these like little ice fragments that then, shatter stragglers or freeze them and stuff. I got Overreach as well, which just gives you 40% area on Herald of Ice. That's really nice, and more chance to shock. We are dealing a fair amount of like lightning damage, so yeah, just having that is pretty nice. So like the flat lightning damage that you get will help you shock a little bit there. And then we got Wind Dancer with this should actually be increased area. So that should be magnified area, Wind Dancer with blind. So this is actually like useful for me doing these videos because I actually get to like have a nicer overview over my build since there's so many moving parts. We're gonna put magnified area too, and the only reason for that is that like when you get hit, it knocks people back. When it knocks them back, it's gonna knock them back further and stuff like that. So that's kind of nice. And then blind, just to make sure that it blinds enemies when they hit you. You got combat frenzy, and you're gonna link charge perfusion to that. Charge regulation, and I got cannibalism here just for a little bit of sustain. And then finally Ghost Dance with compressed duration so that your Ghost Dance charges come up sooner. And that is all for your skill gems. Now let's talk about itemization. As I said previously, you're going to be using a Sky Sliver on your weapon set 1, which is going to be your Whirling Slash. You're going to be using any scepter here as long as it has intelligence and as long as it's a purity that is matching your main hand guiding palm. If you don't have a guiding palm, that's fine. Just use any scepter until you get one. Guiding palms, I think, are like 1 divs or something like that. But yeah, you want a scepter with int and mostly just for spirit, so that you can reserve all of the things that I showed you just now. The reason why you want a scepter on both your main and offhand is because when they changed the spirit stuff to be kind of weird, and especially since you're going to be mostly always in weapon swap 1 because you're pretty much always traveling around, so you're going to be clicking and then traveling, clicking and traveling. So relative to the amount of time that you're spending on weapon swap 1, like you're not really spending much time on weapon swap 2, but the damage is like snapshotted. So yeah, so that's why you want to have this scepter here, so that you can keep all your stuff on, because if you didn't have that, it would just turn off a bunch of your shit, and you really don't want that. You really don't want that to happen, because then that means that your ghost dance isn't active, your heralds aren't active, as your tornadoes are like going around killing stuff and that sort of stuff. Now let me fix this just so I can put this back on. So yeah, scepter in main hand and offhand. Now the downside of this is of course that you can't use dance with death. That really does suck, because 25% more skill speed would be nice, especially since you're like weapon swapping to your offhand. You could make use of that. But yeah, unfortunately we can't do that because it would just mess around with all of our auras and stuff like that, and we don't want that. For your main hand, you want to get a Tangle Tongue. Having 2 sockets is optimal, because it's just better than getting a little bit more crit or whatever, like relative to what you're getting. 2 sockets is better, but you want to have as high critical strike chance as possible. So that's number 1. I would rather have high critical strike chance and 1 socket than low critical strike chance and 2 sockets. So keep that in mind. Right now I just put some elemental damage in there. Honestly, like what elemental damage you put in there doesn't really matter all that much. Ideally, cold damage is better than fire damage, because then that helps your freezes and stuff more, whereas like ignites are completely useless. So this is just me being lazy, so put cold runes in there. And your offhand is where you're getting your gain is extra cold. I like the Guiding Palm Brine Scepter here. You can, there's 3 different types. There's extra fire, there's extra lightning, and there's extra cold. The cold one is what I'm using, but it doesn't really matter. But mind you that if you get the cold one, you want to match it with offhand with the cold, because otherwise, like if you take this off, you can see that my res goes to shit. So you definitely want to have corresponding one in your offhand, otherwise your resistances are just going to go to shit. And yeah, that's also why the weapon swap thing is important, to not use Dance with Death, as I previously mentioned. For the rest, you want a high energy shield helmet. The reason for this is because you are using Subterfuge Mask, which is going to grant you a bunch of evasion per energy shield on your helmet. So you can kind of like double dip on the value of this. You get a bunch of energy shield, which is a bunch of extra HP. Your Ghost Dance is going to feed that back, so every time you get hit, Ghost Dance just fills it back up. And that's why an energy shield helmet here is good. So energy shield life, as much resistances as possible and that sort of stuff. For your amulet, you want a Serpent's Egg. Serpent's Egg is going to give you an additional charge when you gain a charge, which is further compounded by the fact that like you're getting extra charges from all your supports and that sort of stuff. So it just gives, it's just a charge multiplier, and charges on this build is what makes the build feel good, what makes you deal a shitload of damage. The Serpent's Egg is good here, but probably in like turbo endgame you might want to use something else. For your chest, just high evasion, deflection if you can get it, life, that sort of stuff. Gloves, you want as much flat damage as possible here. Same with your rings, flat damage, resistance, deflection if you can get it. Belt, so the belt, I will explain what I want to do next. Here you would just get like strength, life, resistances. But what I want to do is I want to use this Darkness Enthroned with this item gains bonuses from sockets as though it was from gloves. The reason I want that is because there is this rune you can see here, 5 to 12 base fizz, and this is going to be doubled right in your belt, so you're just going to get like a crazy amount of damage, and we're kind of like starving on flat damage from this. I plan to use that, but at the moment I can't actually like swap out of it because my resistances will get all screwed up, and I'm back to being a brokey since I was crafting all day. I mean I'm just bad at the game. I'm a tourist. Yeah. Darkness Enthroned is going to be like the next step that I go, and then in endgame obviously like Headhunter is just going to be turbo gaming. So for your charms, I like to go for a freeze charm. Forsaken Bagel, it's nice for Abyss, I found, because Abyss is just pure chaos damage and fizz damage. So Forsaken Bagel is pretty nice, getting a bit of recoup. Valakhal's Roar for frenzy charges, so when you take lightning damage you get a frenzy charge. It's not bad. And this one is just basically just to not get frozen. That sucks when you get frozen. I feel like I don't get stunned all that much, so that's pretty good. and so that's why I opted in for a this charm. For the defenses, I went like for high evasion as much as I can get, and I feel like this is something that will feel better in early game compared to late game. So now I still consider myself to be relatively in early game, but once I get my my tailwind stacked up, I currently have 50% chance to deflect and 60% chance to evade, and at this point my character feels really good with 2k life and 300. It feels really good. It feels like I'm not dying. I'm able to tank things from bosses. Deflection is like hit or miss, I suppose, right? 50-50, but it's pretty good. It's doing a fairly good job. And the way that I got 50% deflection was basically just 20% here, 10% here, and the rest is on the passive skill tree on this. There's a few more deflection nodes here, but it's probably better. It's honestly better to just go for more evasion there. It's more value. Evasion grants deflect and that kind of stuff. Yeah, but in end game, I feel like going for either hybrid or CI might end up being better because you just get a much bigger health pool. Now, I think there's not really like a reason to go CI, but going like hybrid, I mean, I feel like CI is just too busted, right? Like eventually if you can get like 6k HP, it's just better than having 2k, right? So yeah, if eventually you can get enough evasion to where you have like 60+% evasion with a bunch of deflect, or you won't be able to get deflect actually if you go CI, but just like 60 plus evasion with 5k ES is going to feel really good. So that's probably the end game. And as I mentioned earlier, getting an actual crafted spear here with the flow gem, I think is what it's called, the Garakan's Resolve, would be the next step. And then from there, just improving all the items as you go. Snoobe is also playing this build, and his variant is really good too. And he's using Call of the Brotherhood as his ring to convert his lightning damage to cold. That's a valuable, viable way to do it. It's really strong as well. You can do that if you prefer cold damage over lightning, but I genuinely felt like I had enough cold damage to freeze things with just Guiding Palm, and the build already felt pretty good. Yeah, it felt pretty decent. So I'm just looking at my list here of things to explain, and it feels like overall I explained everything. The defenses, what's worth it, cannibalism for life gain on kill. You can also now gain life gain on hit on your spear, which is insane. It's a desecrated modifier. Another thing I want to try, I want to get Fizz Leech somewhere and spec Walker of the Wilds, so I could get like both my Fizz and Elemental Leech through this. And then I want to level up Whirling Slash. I'm hoping that I get this build to a point where Whirling Slash is going to deal enough damage for me to never have to use Twister for mapping. That would be the dream, where the only time I would ever press Twister is when I come across either a rare or a boss, and the rest of the time I'm Whirling Slashing. That's the dream. Whether I can do that or not, I don't know, but I'm gonna try, and that's where I plan on going next. If you want like incremental updates on the build and things like that, I do have a planner. This is a Maxroll planner that I made for this build, but so far it doesn't really have detailed leveling progression and that sort of stuff. If you want detailed leveling progression, play Lightning Arrow and then reroll to this when you get the uniques that I mentioned. But here is sort of like detailing my progression on this build. So from day one, all the things that I learned. I have to say that the build started feeling really good once I got to Import 3. Import 3 is when things started to really come together. Import 4 is where I'm at right now, basically. So as I keep updating my build, I will keep importing things, and you guys can refer back to this planner and to sort of see what I'm up to. Otherwise, you can always pop by the stream and say hello. I'm live every day. That's pretty much it. That's kind of everything. I really hope that I explained everything. Oh, for you guys that have watched all the way to the end of the video, let me show you something fucking crazy, by the way. This is insane. These time lost jewels are fucking crazy. They're gonna be so expensive when people catch on to this. Like, I was using these last league as well, and there's like even crazier ones, obviously, but they're turbo expensive. But look how many notables are in here, dude. This is like absolutely insane. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notables in this radius. I'm not counting this because this is like my offhand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notables. They get a 10 crit damage bonus each and 4 skill effect duration each, bro. That's crazy. 60 multi is insane. That's like something you get from something like this with reduced crit. So yeah, I think that's fucking crazy. So look out for those. And thanks for watching. Come say hello to the stream if you like the video, or if you want to ask questions, or if you just want to hang out. There's a bunch of shit talking and banter in my stream, but sometimes we take things seriously. That pretty much sums up everything, boys. Peace out, boys. Have a good one.